put down the pen. If you sign that, you lose everything." The silence that followed was heavy enough to crush bones. In the VIP room of the Obsidian, Manhattan's most exclusive restaurant, a tray crashed to the floor. Glass shattered, echoing like a gunshot. Everyone froze. The man holding the gold fountain pen was Sheikh Karim al-Zayani, a man whose net worth could buy small countries. The man shouting at him to sign was Preston Walsh, a Wall Street shark with a smile like a razor blade. But the person who had spoken, the one who dared to interrupt a $250 million deal, was nobody. Just a waitress in a cheap uniform, shaking as she stared at the document on the table. "Get her out of here!" Walsh screamed, his face turning violent red. "No," the sheikh said, his voice low and dangerous. He looked at the waitress. "What did you just say to me?" She took a breath, looked the billionaire in the eye, and spoke, not in English, but in flawless, high court Arabic. "I said this man is lying to you, Your Highness, and I can prove it." Audrey Miller adjusted the collar of her stiff polyester uniform and tried to ignore the throbbing ache in her lower back. It was 7 p.m. at the Obsidian, and the dinner rush was hitting like a tidal wave. "Table 4 needs water, Miller. Stop daydreaming, or you're out on the street." The shout came from Roger, the floor manager. Roger was a man who believed that fear was the best motivational tool. He didn't know that Audrey had once negotiated trade deals in war zones. He didn't know she held a dual degree in linguistics and international relations from Oxford. All Roger knew was that Audrey was 32, broke, and desperate enough to scrub tables for minimum wage plus tips. "On it, Roger," Audrey said, her voice flat. She grabbed a pitcher of water and moved through the dining room. The Obsidian was the kind of place where a salad cost more than Audrey's rent. It was a playground for the masters of the universe, hedge fund managers, tech moguls, and oil barons. To them, Audrey wasn't a person. She was furniture, a vending machine that walked. It hadn't always been this way. 2 years ago, Audrey had been a rising star at Helios Global, a private intelligence firm. She had been the lead analyst for the Middle East sector. She had a fiancé, a career, and a future. Then she met Preston Walsh. Audrey paused near the entrance, her grip tightening on the silver pitcher until her knuckles turned white. Walking through the heavy oak doors was the man himself. Preston Walsh. He looked exactly the same as the day he had framed her. He wore a bespoke Italian suit that cost $5,000. His hair was slicked back with expensive product, and that sneering, predatory smile was plastered on his face. Walsh wasn't just a businessman. He was a vulture. 2 years ago, Audrey had discovered that Walsh was falsifying geological surveys to sell worthless land to foreign investors. She had tried to blow the whistle. Walsh had destroyed her. He had planted evidence, erasing her digital footprint and replacing it with fabricated proof of embezzlement. He had turned her colleagues against her. He had ensured she was blacklisted from every reputable agency in the Western world. Her fiancé left her when the legal bills piled up. She lost her apartment, her reputation, and her dignity. Now, she was pouring water for the man who had taken her life away. "Right this way, Mr. Walsh," the hostess cooed, leading him toward the private salon, a glass-walled enclosure reserved for royalty and heads of state. Audrey's heart hammered against her ribs. She wanted to run. She wanted to throw the pitcher of ice water in his face, but she couldn't. She had $70 in her bank account, and rent was due on Tuesday. "Miller!" Roger snapped, appearing at her elbow. "The VIP room. Walsh is meeting a high-profile client. I need someone who keeps their mouth shut and their eyes down. Can you handle that?" Audrey felt a cold chill run down her spine. "Roger, please, send Jenny. I can take the patio." "Jenny is incompetent," Roger sneered, and Walsh specifically asked for the quiet one. You go in, you pour the wine, you clear the plates. You do not speak unless spoken to. If I hear a single complaint, you're fired before the check drops. Understand? Audrey swallowed the bile rising in her throat. She had no choice. Understood. She smoothed her apron, took a deep breath, and walked toward the glass room. She told herself she was invisible. She told herself she was just a ghost, haunting her old life. But as she pushed open the heavy glass door, she realized this wasn't just a dinner. Walsh had maps spread out on the table. He had legal contracts thick enough to be a novel. And sitting across from him, looking bored and skeptical, was Sheikh Karim al-Zayani. Audrey almost dropped her tray. She knew that face. Everyone in the intelligence community knew that face. Karim wasn't just a playboy billionaire. He was sharp, ruthless, and controlled one of the largest sovereign wealth funds in the Gulf. Walsh wasn't just buying dinner. He was hunting a whale. The atmosphere inside the private salon was cold, despite the warmth of the restaurant. Your Highness, Walsh said, his voice dripping with false charm as he gestured to the leather-bound portfolio on the table. I assure you, Project Meridian is not just an investment. It is a legacy. The lithium deposits in this region of Nevada are unprecedented. We have the geological surveys to prove it. Audrey moved silently to the table, placing a crystal glass in front of the sheikh. Karim didn't look up. He was staring at the maps, his dark eyes narrowing. My advisors are hesitant, Mr. Walsh, Karim said. His English was perfect, accented with the clipped tones of a British boarding school education. They believe the environmental restrictions in that sector are insurmountable. Bureaucracy, Walsh waved a hand dismissively. We have the permits fast-tracked. I have contacts in the Department of Interior who owe me favors. The land is clean, and it is ready for extraction. Audrey poured the sparkling water into Walsh's glass. Her hand trembled slightly. She knew Walsh. She knew Project Meridian. It was a scam. She had seen the preliminary reports on that Nevada sector 3 years ago, when she was still at Helios. The land was barren of lithium. But worse, it was a protected nesting ground for an endangered species. It wasn't just a bowed investment, it was a legal landmine. If Karim signed that deal, he wouldn't just lose money, he would be embroiled in a federal investigation that would humiliate his family and freeze his assets in the US. I have the contract right here, Walsh pressed, sliding a thick document across the mahogany table. The deal expires at midnight, Your Highness. Another buyer from Beijing is flying in tomorrow morning. I held this for you out of respect for your father, but I cannot hold it past tonight. The classic pressure tactic. Create urgency, force a mistake. Karim sighed, picking up the document. And the clause regarding the reclamation bond? Page 42, Walsh said quickly. Fully covered by my firm. You have zero liability. Audrey finished pouring the water and stepped back into the shadows near the service station. She should leave. She should walk out the door and never look back. It wasn't her problem. Karim al-Zayani was a billionaire. He could afford to lose a few $100 million. But then, Walsh did something that made Audrey's blood run cold. He pulled out his phone. Excuse me one moment, Your Highness. My legal team needs a quick confirmation. Walsh turned away from the sheikh, lowering his voice. He spoke into the phone, not in English, but in a fractured, clumsy French, assuming the sheikh wouldn't pay attention. Oui, idiot, he is biting. No, he hasn't read the Arabic addendum. Why would he? He trusts the English translation. The liability transfer is hidden in the translation errors. Once he signs, the cleanup costs are his. We walk away with the $250 million cash injection. Audrey froze. Walsh was smarter than she thought. He knew the Sheikh would have his lawyers scrub the English contract, but international deals often had dual language clauses for legal standing in the buyer's home country. Walsh had deliberately mistranslated the Arabic version of the contract, the one that would likely be filed in Karim's home courts, to shift the debt onto the Sheikh. It wasn't just theft. It was high treason against a foreign dignitary disguised as a business deal. Karim looked at the document, flipping to the back. He looked tired. He reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a gold fountain pen. "Very well, Walsh," Karim said, sounding resigned. "I trust you. My father spoke highly of your firm." Walsh ended his call and turned back, his eyes gleaming with greed. "Your father was a great man. You are making him proud." Karim uncapped the pen. The nib hovered over the signature line. Audrey looked at Walsh. She saw the smug satisfaction on his face, the same look he had the day he fired her, the look of a man who believed he was untouchable. If she spoke, she lost her job. She lost her reference. She might even get arrested for causing a scene. But if she stayed silent, the truth died in this room. Audrey closed her eyes. She thought of her father, a man who drove a bus for 30 years and never stole a dime. She thought of the oath she took when she became an analyst, to seek the truth. She opened her eyes. The fear was gone, replaced by a cold, sharp anger. She stepped forward, ignoring the rule about being invisible. She walked right up to the table. "Put down the pen," she said, her voice clear and steady. "If you sign that, you lose everything." Walsh's head snapped up. His eyes bulged. "Excuse me?" Roger, who had been watching from the door, went pale. He started rushing toward the table. "You heard me," Audrey said, looking directly at the Sheikh. She didn't look like a waitress anymore. She stood with the posture of a soldier. "The English contract is a decoy. The trap is in the Arabic addendum." "You lying little—" Walsh stood up, knocking his chair back. "Security! Get this crazy woman out of here!" Roger grabbed Audrey's arm, his nails digging into her skin. "I am so sorry, Mr. Walsh, Your Highness. She's fired. She's mentally unstable. Come on, you—" "Let go of her," the Sheikh said. It wasn't a shout. It was a command. Roger froze. He let go of Audrey's arm as if it were red-hot iron. Karim slowly capped his pen. He looked at Walsh, then he turned his dark, intelligent gaze toward Audrey. He looked her up and down, the stained apron, the cheap shoes, the tired eyes. "You are a waitress," Karim said. "Yes," Audrey replied. "And you claim to know what is in this contract." "I don't claim," Audrey said. "I know. Mr. Walsh just admitted on the phone, in French, that he falsified the Arabic translation to transfer the environmental liability to your holding company. He called you an idiot." Walsh turned a shade of purple that looked dangerous. "She's lying. She's a disgruntled lowlife looking for a payoff. I don't even speak French." Karim looked at Audrey. "Mr. Walsh says he does not speak French, and he implies you do not read Arabic." This was the test. Audrey took a deep breath. She looked at the Arabic text on the bottom of the document lying on the table, the text Walsh thought no one in New York would bother to read carefully. She switched languages. The transition was instant. "Your Highness," she spoke in the flawless, formal Arabic of the Gulf courts, a dialect she had spent 4 years mastering. The text in paragraph 4 uses the word kafala regarding the debt structure, but in the context of the liability clause, it has been altered to damanat shakhsya, personal guarantee. It binds your personal assets, not the corporation's, to the remediation of the land. The room went dead silent. Walsh's mouth opened, but no sound came out. He didn't understand the words, but he understood the tone. He understood the fluency. Karim stared at her. For the first time, the boredom vanished from his eyes. He looked at the contract, reading the line she had pointed out. His eyes widened slightly. He looked back at Audrey. "Who are you?" "My name is Audrey Miller," she said, switching back to English. "And I used to catch men like him for a living." The silence in the private salon was no longer heavy. It was razor-sharp. The air felt charged with static, the kind that precedes a lightning strike. Preston Walsh stared at the waitress, his face a mask of disbelief that was quickly cracking into panic. He looked at the sheikh, then back at Audrey. He let out a laugh, a short, jagged sound that fooled no one. "Your Highness," Walsh said, spreading his hands in a gesture of mock surrender. "This is absurd. You're going to listen to a servant? She's clearly deranged. A fan, perhaps, trying to get your attention." He turned a venomous glare on Roger. "Get her out. Now, or I sue this restaurant into oblivion." Roger, sweating profusely, lunged forward again. "Miller, you are done. Get your things and—" "I said—" Karim's voice cut through the noise like a blade. "Leave her alone." Karim didn't look at Walsh. He didn't look at Roger. He was studying the document on the table, his finger tracing the line Audrey had pointed out. He read the Arabic script, his lips moving silently. Then he looked up, and the temperature in the room seemed to drop 10 degrees. "Mr. Walsh," Karim said softly, "do you know what Damanat Shakhsiya means?" Walsh swallowed hard, tugging at his collar. "I rely on my translators, Your Highness. If there is a clerical error, we can amend it immediately. A simple typo." "It is not a typo," Audrey said. She stood her ground, even though her legs were shaking. "A typo is a misplaced comma. This is a complete restructuring of the liability clause. In the English version, the remediation bond is capped at $5 million. In the Arabic version, the text explicitly states the signatory accepts unlimited personal liability for all environmental restoration costs, currently estimated at $300 million based on the EPA reports for that sector. She looked at Walsh. "You weren't selling him a mine, Preston. You were selling him a debt." Walsh slammed his fist on the table, rattling the crystal. "You shut your mouth. You don't know what you're talking about." He turned to Karim, desperation seeping into his voice. "Karim, listen to me. This woman is a fraud. Look at her. She's waiting tables. If she's such a genius, why is she pouring water for minimum wage?" Walsh pulled out his phone again, his thumbs flying across the screen. "I knew I recognized her. Give me a second." He smirked, holding the screen up towards the sheikh. "Here. Audrey Miller. Fired from Helios Global 2 years ago. Indicted for corporate espionage and embezzlement. She stole client data and tried to sell it on the black market. She's a criminal, Your Highness. She's probably working for your competitors right now, trying to sabotage this deal." Audrey felt the blood drain from her face. The old shame, cold and familiar, washed over her. It was the lie that had destroyed her life, and now Walsh was using it to bury her again. Roger gasped. "A criminal? In my restaurant?" Karim looked at the phone screen, then he looked at Audrey. His expression was unreadable. He saw the way she shrank back, the way her shoulders slumped. It was the reaction of someone who had been beaten down, not someone who had been caught. "Is this true?" Karim asked Audrey. Audrey looked up. Her eyes were wet, but her voice was steady. "I was framed. By him. Because I found out he was selling toxic land to a pension fund in Ohio. He destroyed my career to protect his bonus. I have never stolen a dime in my life." "She's a liar!" Walsh screamed. "Sign the papers, Karim. Don't let this trash cost you the deal of the century." Karim stood up. He was tall, over 6'2", and he towered over Walsh. He picked up the contract, the document worth $250 million. "Mr. Walsh," Karim said calmly, "I do not care what this woman did 2 years ago. I care about what she did 2 minutes ago." "What?" Walsh blinked. "She told me the truth," Karim said, "and you lied." Karim took the thick stack of papers and ripped them in half. The sound of tearing paper was loud in the quiet room. He tossed the shredded pieces onto the table. "The deal is dead," Karim declared. "And if you ever approach me, my family, or any of my associates again, I will have my legal team dissect every business transaction you have made in the last decade. I will find every typo, Mr. Walsh, and I will bury you with them." Walsh stood there, mouth agape, his face turning a sickly shade of grey. He had gambled everything on this deal. He was leveraged to the hilt. Without the Sheikh's money, Walsh was ruined. You can't," Walsh stammered. "Get out," Karim said. Walsh looked at Audrey. The hatred in his eyes was pure and undiluted. "You'll regret this, Miller. You're dead. You hear me? You're dead." He stormed out of the glass room, shoving Roger aside. The restaurant fell silent as the humiliated billionaire marched out to the front door. Roger, trembling with rage and fear, turned on Audrey. You idiot! You just cost this restaurant our best client. Do you have any idea what you've done? She saved my fortune," Karim interrupted, stepping between Roger and Audrey. "I don't care," Roger shrieked, losing his composure. "She's fired. Get out, Miller, and don't expect your last paycheck." Audrey nodded slowly. She untied her apron. She knew this was coming. "Fine, I'm going." She placed the apron on the table next to the torn contract. She felt strangely light. She had no job, no money, and a powerful enemy who had just threatened her life. But for the first time in 2 years, she felt clean. She had stood up to Preston Walsh and won. "Wait," Karim said. Audrey paused. Karim turned to his bodyguard, a massive man named Arthur, who had been standing silently in the corner the entire time. "Arthur, bring the car around, the back exit." "Yes, sir," Arthur grunted into his earpiece. Karim looked at Audrey. "You are not going out the front door. Walsh is a vindictive man. He will be waiting, or he will have someone waiting." "I can take care of myself," Audrey said, though she wasn't sure she believed it. "I have no doubt you can," Karim said, a hint of a smile touching his lips. "But you are currently unemployed, and you just performed a service for me that is worth considerable compensation. I do not leave my debts unpaid, Miss Miller." He gestured toward the kitchen exit. "Please, join me. We have much to discuss." Audrey hesitated. She looked at Roger, who was fuming impotently. She looked at the guests staring at her. Then she looked at Karim. His dark eyes were serious, but there was a kindness there she hadn't expected. "Okay," she whispered. The back alley behind the Obsidian smelled of rain and garbage, but the vehicle waiting for them was pristine. It was a black Cadillac Escalade, armored and imposing, with tinted windows that turned the outside world into a grey blur. Arthur held the door open. Karim gestured for Audrey to enter first. She slid onto the cream-coloured leather seats, feeling incredibly out of place in her cheap black slacks and white button-down shirt. Karim slid in beside her, and the heavy door thudded shut, sealing out the noise of the city. "To the hotel, sir?" Arthur asked from the driver's seat. "No," Karim said. "Just drive. Keep moving." The car pulled away smoothly. Audrey sat with her hands folded in her lap, staring out the window. Her heart was still racing. "Drink," Karim said. She turned. He was holding out a bottle of water from the car's console. "Thank you," she said, taking it. Her hands were still shaking slightly. She took a long sip. the cold water helping to ground her. "So," Karim said, turning slightly to face her. "Audrey Miller, Oxford graduate, top analyst at Helios Global, specialization in Middle Eastern geopolitical risk, fluent in Arabic, French, and Farsi." Audrey choked on her water. She coughed, wiping her mouth. How do you know that?" Karim held up his phone. "I have resources, Audrey. While Walsh was screaming about your criminal record, my team was pulling your actual file, the restricted one." He swiped the screen and handed the phone to her. It was a dossier, her dossier. But it wasn't the fake police report Walsh had shown. It was her employment history from Helios, the commendations, the performance reviews, and at the very bottom, a flagged note from the internal auditor that had been suppressed. Subject raised concerns regarding Walsh accounts. Investigation terminated by executive order. "You found this in 5 minutes?" Audrey asked, stunned. "I have a very good security team," Karim said. "And I have been suspicious of Preston Walsh for weeks, but I lacked the proof. I needed him to make a mistake. I didn't expect his mistake to be a waitress with a genius-level IQ." He took the phone back. "Why didn't you fight the charges, Audrey? With this record, you could have crushed him in court." Audrey laughed bitterly. "With what money? Walsh froze my accounts. He paid off my lawyer to tank the case. He threatened my parents. I walked away to keep them safe. I thought if I disappeared, he would move on." "Men like Walsh never move on," Karim said darkly. "They only expand. He is a cancer. And today, you cut off his food supply." Karim leaned forward, his expression intense. "Walsh wasn't working alone, Audrey. That contract, the Arabic alteration, was sophisticated. It used legal terminology that is specific to my family's private holding laws. Information that is not public." Audrey's analyst brain kicked in instantly, overriding her fear. "You think he has a mole inside your organization?" "I know he does," Karim said. "Someone on my legal team fed him the language. Someone close to me. I came to New York to flush them out. Walsh was the bait. But now that the deal is dead, the mole will go underground. Unless—" He trailed off, watching her. "Unless what?" Audrey asked. "Unless I hire someone who knows Walsh's playbook, someone who can read between the lines, someone who has nothing to lose and a score to settle." Audrey stared at him. "You want to hire me?" "I want to hire you as a private consultant," Karim corrected. "Your job will be to analyze the data trail between Walsh's firm and my company. Find the leak. Help me destroy the network that tried to rob me." "I'm a waitress," Audrey said weakly. "I haven't done analysis in 2 years." "You spotted a translation trap in 10 seconds from across a room," Karim countered. "You are not a waitress. You are a weapon that has been left on a shelf. I want to pick you up." "And what do I get?" Audrey asked. She couldn't afford to be naive. "Not again." $500,000, Karim said, calm as if discussing the weather. "Plus expenses. And when we are done, my legal team will take the evidence we find and use it to clear your name. We will expose Walsh for what he is. You will get your life back." Audrey felt tears prick her eyes again. Her life back. It was a dream she had given up on. "Why?" she asked. "Why trust me? Walsh said I was a thief." "I trust my instincts," Karim said, "and I saw your eyes when you looked at that contract. You were not angry about the money. You were angry about the lie. You value truth, Audrey. That is a rare currency." The car hit a bump, and their shoulders brushed. Audrey felt a jolt of electricity. It wasn't just fear or adrenaline. There was something about Karim, his intensity, his power, but also his strange, protective calm. Audrey started to speak, but she was interrupted by a sharp beep from the dashboard. Arthur's voice came from the front, tight and urgent. Sir, we have a tail. Karim's demeanor shifted instantly. The charm vanished, replaced by the hard edge of a predator. Identify. Black SUV, no plates, coming up fast on the left flank. They're trying to box us in. Audrey turned to look out the rear window. Headlights were blindingly bright, surging towards them. Walsh, she whispered. He is desperate, Karim said, reaching into the side pocket of the door. He didn't pull out a gun, but a heavy, encrypted radio. He knows that if I leave New York with what I know, he is finished. He wants to scare us, or worse. The Escalade swerved violently as the SUV rammed their bumper. Metal screeched against metal. Audrey gasped, grabbing the handle above the door. Hang on, Arthur shouted. He stomped on the accelerator. The armored engine roared, and the heavy vehicle surged forward, pushing 70 miles per hour on the city streets. This isn't a negotiation anymore, Karim said, his eyes locking onto Audrey's. You are involved, whether you sign a contract or not. Walsh has marked you. The pursuing SUV pulled alongside them. The window rolled down. Audrey saw a man in a ski mask, raising something that looked like a silenced pistol. Get down, Karim shouted. He threw his arm across Audrey, pushing her down into the leather seat, covering her body with his own. Thwip, thwip. 2 cracks appeared in the bulletproof glass, right where Audrey's head had been a second ago. The spiderweb fractures bloomed white against the darkness. Arthur, evasive maneuvers. Now, Karim commanded. Audrey was pressed against the leather, the scent of Karim's cologne, sandalwood and expensive tobacco, filling her senses. His heart was beating against her back, strong and steady. He wasn't panicking, he was angry. I accept, Audrey yelled from beneath him. What? Karim asked, bracing himself as the car drifted around a corner. The job, Audrey shouted. I accept the job. Let's take this bastard down. Karim looked down at her, a fierce grin breaking through the tension. Excellent choice, Ms. Miller. The armored Cadillac screeched into the underground parking bay of a nondescript steel and glass skyscraper in Tribeca. The heavy steel shutters slammed down behind them, cutting off the streetlights and the threat of the pursuing SUV. We are clear, Arthur announced, his voice tight. Security protocols engaged. No one gets in or out without a retinal scan. Karim let out a breath he seemed to have been holding since they left the restaurant. He didn't move away from Audrey immediately. For a moment, they stayed pressed together in the back seat, the adrenaline still humming between them like a live wire. Are you hurt? Karim asked, his voice low, his hand checking her shoulder for injuries. Audrey shook her head. I don't think so. Just shaken. Good. Karim pulled away, his face hardening back into the mask of the billionaire CEO. But his eyes lingered on her for a second longer than necessary. Let's go. We have work to do. They took a private elevator to the penthouse, the Sky Vault, as Karim called it. It wasn't just an apartment, it was a command center. Walls of glass overlooked the rainy Manhattan skyline, but inside, the room was filled with servers, multiple monitors, and a low hum of cooling fans. This is where I run my US operations, Karim explained, tossing his jacket onto a sofa worth more than Audrey's entire childhood home. Arthur, get the medical kit. Miss Miller has a scratch on her arm. Audrey looked down. She hadn't even noticed the thin line of blood where the glass shard had grazed her. It's nothing. It is not nothing, Karim insisted. He gently took her arm, leading her to the kitchen island. He opened the kit Arthur provided and began to clean the cut himself. His hands, large and powerful, were surprisingly gentle. You have a staff for this, Audrey said, watching him. Why are you doing it? Because you took a bullet meant for my reputation, Karim said without looking up, and because I do not trust my staff right now. Not until we find the leak. He placed a bandage over the cut, and looked her in the eye. The moment was intimate, quiet, and terrifying. Audrey felt that pull again, a magnetic force that had nothing to do with contracts or money. "The data," Audrey said, breaking the spell. She needed to focus. She walked over to the main terminal. If Walsh had the specific legal language for the Arabic contract, he didn't guess it. Someone sent it to him. "I need access to your legal team's communication logs for the last month." Karim typed in a complex password. "Access granted. My lead counsel is a man named Grant. He has been with my family for 20 years. I trust him with my life." "In my line of work," Audrey said, her fingers flying across the keyboard, "the people you trust with your life are usually the ones who take it." She worked for 2 hours. The silence in the room was only broken by the typing and the sound of rain against the glass. Karim paced, making calls on a burner phone, liquidating assets to protect them from Walsh's potential legal attacks. Audrey's eyes scanned thousands of emails, looking for patterns. She wasn't looking for a name. She was looking for a syntax, a linguistic fingerprint. Then she found it. "Karim," she said softly. He stopped pacing and walked over to her. "What is it?" "Look at this email." She pointed to the screen. "It's a draft from your lawyer, Grant, sent to your internal server 3 weeks ago. Subject: liability caps." "Standard procedure," Karim said. "Now look at this." Audrey opened a second window. It was a fragment of a text message recovered from a deleted server sector, a ghost file. This was sent to an external IP address registered to a shell company in the Cayman Islands. The company is a subsidiary of Walsh Enterprises. Karim leaned in. "The phrasing," Audrey explained. "Grant uses a very specific error. He consistently misuses the subjunctive mood in French when discussing future indemnification. See here? Il faut que nous payions instead of the correct payons. It's a subtle grammatical tick." She pulled up the intercepted communication to Walsh. The mole sent a memo to Walsh instructing him on how to alter the Arabic text. The memo contains the exact same grammatical error in the French explanatory notes. Karim stared at the screen. His face went pale, then cold. "Grant." "He didn't just leak the info," Audrey said, her voice grim. "He helped draft the trap. He's been working with Walsh for months, maybe years." Karim closed his eyes. The betrayal was a physical blow. Grant was his godfather's son. They had grown up together. "Why?" Karim whispered. Audrey dug deeper. "Money. Looks like Grant has a gambling problem. Heavy debts in Monte Carlo. Walsh bought his debt. Grant owns him." Karim opened his eyes. The sadness was gone, replaced by a terrifying resolve. "Walsh thinks he is hunting us. He thinks we are running. He doesn't know we have the logs," Audrey said. "No," Karim said. "He thinks I am a spoiled prince who hides behind bodyguards. And he thinks you are just a waitress." Karim walked to the window, looking out at the city that wanted to eat them alive. "We are going to change the narrative," Karim said. "Grant is meeting me tomorrow morning to damage control the situation. He doesn't know I know." "He'll try to get you to settle with Walsh," Audrey predicted. "He'll say Walsh is too dangerous, that you should pay him off to avoid a scandal." "Exactly." Karim turned back to her, a dangerous smile playing on his lips. "And we are going to let him believe it works. We are going to set a trap so big that Walsh will walk right into it with a smile on his face." He looked at Audrey. "But to do it, I need you to do something dangerous. I need you to be the bait." "I'm listening," Audrey said. The plan was insane. If it worked, Walsh went to prison for fraud and extortion. If it failed, Audrey would likely end up dead in a ditch, and Karim would be ruined. The setting for the trap was the Teterboro Airport in New Jersey, inside a private hangar. It was neutral ground, isolated, and perfect for a shady handover. The next morning, the rain had cleared, leaving a grey steel sky. Audrey stood in front of the mirror in the penthouse guest room. She wasn't wearing her waitress uniform. Karim had provided clothes, a sharp, navy blue business suit, heels that clicked like hammers, and a trench coat. She looked like the high-powered analyst she used to be. She adjusted the pearl earring in her left ear. It contained a microscopic microphone and transmitter. "Testing," she whispered. Loud and clear, Karim's voice came through the tiny earpiece. He was positioned in the control tower of the airfield, half a mile away, with a team of private security contractors and 2 FBI agents he had called in as a favor. "Remember," Karim said, his voice tight with worry. "Grant will be with Walsh. You have to sell the story that I fired you, that I didn't pay you, that you want revenge." "I know the script, Karim," Audrey said. "I can do this." "Audrey," he paused, "if you feel unsafe, if they touch you, say the word rain. We will breach the doors." "I'll be fine," she said. She took a deep breath, grabbed the briefcase, and walked out. An hour later, Audrey stood in the center of the echoing hangar. A solitary private jet sat in the background, engines cold. The metal doors groaned open. A black limousine drove in, followed by the same SUV that had chased them the night before. Preston Walsh stepped out of the limo. He looked smug, relaxed. Beside him was a man Audrey recognized from the photos, Grant. He looked nervous, his eyes darting around the hangar. Walsh walked toward Audrey, his footsteps echoing on the concrete. He stopped 10 feet away. "Well, well," Walsh sneered. "The waitress? I must say, you clean up nicely. I didn't recognize you without the pitcher of water." "Cut the crap, Walsh," Audrey said, channeling every ounce of bitterness she had felt for the last 2 years. "You were right. Karim is an arrogant fool. He used me to get out of the contract, then tossed me aside like garbage. He didn't even pay me the reward he promised." She threw the briefcase onto the ground between them. "I want what I'm worth." Walsh laughed. He looked at Grant. "See? Everyone has a price, Grant, even the Crusaders." Grant stepped forward, sweating. "Are you sure he doesn't know you're here, Audrey? Karim is intuitive." "He's busy packing his bags," Audrey lied smoothly. "He's fleeing back to the Gulf. He thinks he's safe. But I stole this before I left." She pointed to the briefcase. "That contains the hard drive from his personal server, passwords, bank codes, and the unredacted geological surveys for every site he owns in America. It's worth billions." Walsh's eyes lit up with greed. He took a step toward the briefcase. Audrey said, stepping in his way. $5 million. Cash. Right now." Walsh sneered. "You think you're in a position to negotiate? I could have my men kill you and take it." "You could," Audrey said, keeping her voice steady despite her heart hammering against her ribs. "But the drive is biometrically locked to my retina. You kill me, you get a paperweight. You pay me, I unlock it, and you own the Al-Zayani empire." Walsh paused. He looked at her, searching for the lie. Audrey held his gaze. She thought of the nights she spent crying in her cheap apartment. She thought of her father's disappointment. She channeled all that pain into a look of pure, mercenary coldness. "Fine," Walsh spat. He snapped his fingers. One of his goons brought a duffel bag from the SUV and threw it at Audrey's feet. It landed with a heavy thud. "Open it," Walsh commanded. Audrey knelt. She unzipped the bag. It was filled with stacks of $100 bills. "We have the exchange," Karim's voice whispered in her ear. "We have him on tape buying stolen property. That's a felony. Stall him. We are moving in." Audrey stood up. Pleasure doing business with you, Preston. She bent down to pick up the briefcase to hand it over. Wait, Grant said suddenly. His voice was high-pitched, panicked. Walsh stopped. What? Grant was staring at Audrey's ear. She's not wearing earrings in her file photo. She never wears jewelry. Audrey froze. Grant lunged forward. It's a wire. She's wearing a wire. You bitch, Walsh screamed. He pulled a gun from his coat pocket, faster than Audrey expected. He didn't aim at her head. He aimed at her chest. Rain! Audrey shouted. Rain! Rain! Boom! The gunshot was deafening in the enclosed space. Audrey felt a sledgehammer hit her shoulder. The force spun her around, and she hit the concrete hard. The briefcase skittered away. Kill her! Walsh screamed at his men. Kill her and get the drive! Suddenly, the hangar skylights shattered. Ropes dropped from the ceiling. Tactical teams in black gear descended like spiders. At the same time, the main hangar doors began to close, and an armored vehicle, Karim's Cadillac, smashed through the side service entrance, scattering Walsh's men. FBI, drop your weapons! The amplified voice boomed through the hangar. Gunfire erupted. Walsh's bodyguards opened fire on the tactical team. It was chaos. Audrey lay on the cold concrete, clutching her shoulder. It burned like fire. She saw Boots running toward her. Walsh was running toward the jet, dragging Grant with him. He was trying to escape, but the Cadillac drifted sideways, blocking the path to the jet. The door flew open. Karim stepped out. He wasn't wearing a suit. He was wearing a tactical vest over his shirt, and he held a sleek, black assault rifle. He looked like a god of war. Walsh! Karim roared. Walsh turned, raising his pistol. Karim didn't hesitate. He fired 2 precise shots. One hit the ground in front of Walsh. The second shattered the engine turbine of the jet behind him. Walsh flinched, dropping his gun. Karim marched forward, ignoring the chaos around him. He grabbed Walsh by the lapels of his expensive coat and slammed him against the side of the limo. I told you, Karim snarled, his face inches from Walsh's. If you touched her, I would bury you. Walsh was trembling, blubbering. It was Grant. It was his idea. I have immunity. I have connections. You have nothing, Karim said, shoving him to the ground as FBI agents swarmed in to cuff him. Karim turned, his eyes wild, scanning the floor. Audrey! He ran to where she was lying. He dropped his weapon and fell to his knees, sliding on the concrete. Audrey! He ripped off his vest and pressed it against her shoulder. Look at me. Look at me. Audrey blinked. Her vision was blurry. The pain was dulling into a strange numbness. Did we get him? We got him, Karim said, his voice cracking. He looked terrified. Stay with me. The medics are here. Do not close your eyes. You look good with a gun, Audrey mumbled, a faint smile touching her lips before the darkness took her. The first thing Audrey noticed was the smell. It wasn't the antiseptic sting of a normal hospital. It smelled of fresh lilies and expensive linen. She opened her eyes slowly. The light was soft, filtered through silk curtains. She wasn't in a ward. She was in a suite that looked more like a 5-star hotel than a medical facility. She tried to sit up, but a sharp twinge in her left shoulder made her gasp. Do not move, a deep voice commanded from the corner. Audrey turned her head. Karim was sitting in a velvet armchair, a stack of files on his lap. He looked exhausted. His tie was gone, his shirt was unbuttoned at the top, and there was a shadow of stubble on his jaw. He looked less like a billionaire and more like a man who had been keeping a vigil. He stood up and walked to the bed, pouring a glass of water. How long? Audrey croaked. Her throat felt like sandpaper. 3 days, Karim said gently, holding the glass to her lips. The bullet passed through the muscle. It missed the bone and the artery. You were very lucky, Audrey. And Walsh? She asked. Karim's face darkened, but his eyes held a grim satisfaction. He picked up a remote control and turned on the flat-screen TV mounted on the wall. It was a news channel. The headline banner was bright red. Wall Street shock. Walsh Enterprises raided by FBI. On the screen, footage showed Preston Walsh being led out of his office in handcuffs, his face hidden by a jacket. Following him was Grant, looking pale and terrified. Walsh is being charged with wire fraud, attempted murder, and conspiracy to commit international espionage, Karim narrated calmly. Grant turned state's witness immediately. He gave them everything: the fake geological surveys, the bribed officials, the offshore accounts. Walsh will die in prison. Audrey watched the screen, feeling a heavy weight lift off her chest. The man who had haunted her nightmares, who had stolen her career and her dignity, was finished. "And my record?" Audrey asked quietly. "Expunged," Karim said. "My legal team met with the district attorney yesterday. With the evidence from Walsh's server, they proved you were framed. Helios Global has already issued a public apology. They are offering you your old job back with a substantial raise." Audrey looked at her hands. That's good." "It is insulting," Karim corrected. Audrey looked up, surprised. Karim sat on the edge of the bed. "They abandoned you when you needed them most. They do not deserve you." He reached into his pocket and pulled out a folded piece of paper. It wasn't a check. It was a contract. "I told you I pay my debts," Karim said. "I transferred the $5 million to your account this morning. That is yours, no matter what." Audrey's eyes widened. $5 million. She was free. She never had to work again. "But," Karim continued, sliding the paper toward her, "I am hoping you will not retire. I have fired my entire North American legal and strategic team. I need someone I can trust to build a new one. Someone who sees what others miss. Someone brave enough to stand in front of a bullet for the truth." Audrey read the title on the contract. Director of Global Strategy, Al Zayani Holdings. The salary listed below the title made the $5 million look like pocket change. "You want me to run your American operations?" Audrey whispered. "No," Karim said softly. "I want you to run everything. By my side." He reached out and took her hand. His touch was warm, solid. "When I saw you fall in that hangar, I realized that I did not care about the money. I did not care about the scam. I was terrified of losing you." Audrey looked at him. The arrogant sheikh she had met in the restaurant was gone. In his place was a man who looked at her as if she were the only person in the world. "I'm just a waitress," Audrey teased, her voice trembling with emotion. "You were never just a waitress," Karim smiled, bringing her hand to his lips. "You were a queen in disguise. I just happened to be the one who recognized the crown." Audrey squeezed his hand back. "I accept." 2 months later, the reopening of the Obsidian was the social event of the season. The restaurant had been closed for renovations after the incident, and tonight the elite of New York were fighting to get in. A black limousine pulled up to the curb. The paparazzi flashed their cameras blindingly. Roger, the manager who had once fired Audrey for a spill, was standing at the door, checking the list. He looked nervous. He had heard the rumors about who bought the building. The back door of the limo opened. Arthur, the bodyguard, stepped out and held the door. Karim al-Zayani emerged, looking dashing in a tuxedo. He turned and offered his hand to the woman inside. Audrey Miller stepped out. She was wearing a gown of emerald green silk that shimmered under the camera flashes. She wore diamonds around her neck that cost more than the restaurant itself. But it was the way she carried herself, head high, eyes sharp and confident, that made the crowd gasp. She walked up the red carpet, her arm linked with Karim's. Roger dropped his clipboard. His mouth hung open. "Miller? Audrey?" Audrey stopped in front of him. She looked at the sweating manager, then at the restaurant behind him. "Good evening, Roger," she said coolly. I, Roger stammered. Can I get you a table?" "Actually, no," Audrey said with a polite smile. "We're not here to eat." Karim stepped forward. "We are here to inspect the property. Ms. Miller purchased the building this morning. She is your new landlord." Roger turned the color of old paper. "And Roger?" Audrey added. "I think we're going to need to make some changes to the management. We need someone who treats the staff with respect. Pack your things." She didn't wait for his response. She and Karim walked past him, through the heavy oak doors, and into the restaurant where their story began. They walked to the private salon. The table was set. Karim pulled out a chair for her. "To new beginnings," he said, pouring a glass of vintage sparkling water. Audrey raised her glass. She thought of the journey, from the stained apron to the emerald gown, from the shame of the past to the power of the present. "To the truth," she replied in perfect Arabic. Karim smiled, and as they clinked glasses, Audrey knew that this wasn't just a happy ending. It was an empire in the making. Audrey Miller's journey from a disgraced analyst hiding in a waitress's uniform to the director of a global empire is a powerful reminder that the truth always surfaces. While Preston Walsh and his corrupt lawyer believed their power made them untouchable, they underestimated the intelligence and integrity of the invisible woman pouring their water. By refusing to stay silent in the face of a $250 million lie, Audrey not only saved Sheikh Karim's fortune, but also reclaimed her own life. It serves as a testament that true worth isn't defined by a job title or a uniform, but by character, courage, and the willingness to do what is right, even when the cost is high. Karma, as Walsh discovered, has a way of balancing the ledger. Wow, what a journey for Audrey, from being fired by a cruel manager to owning the building. That is the ultimate payback. If you enjoyed this story of justice, romance, and high-stakes drama, please hit that like button. It really helps the channel grow. Question for you. If you were in Audrey's shoes and saw a billionaire being scammed, would you have spoken up and risked your job, or stayed silent? Let me know your answer in the comments below. Don't forget to subscribe and ring the bell so you never miss a new story. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.